Thank you, everyone. Good morning.
Good morning.
I want you to think back to the last hotel you stayed at. You check in. You make sure, of course, that they have your frequent flyer number in the computer. Why they don't have it in already, I can't tell you. I don't understand that. You go up to your room, you drop your bags, and for some reason, the first place you always check out is the bathroom, right? So you walk in the bathroom, and right there on the toilet is a giant cockroach. Thank you. Now, think about this. 20 years ago, if you saw that cockroach, the first thing you would do is scream. Then you would go to the house phone. For those of you under 35 years old, those were phones with wires that went into the wall, okay? And you'd call the front desk, and they would send someone up, and they would take care of it, and then you'd have your stay at the hotel, and then you would leave, and you would go home. And when you were at home, it would dawn on you that you weren't really happy about that. So you're going to do something about it, right? What could you do? Well, you're going to write a letter. So first you have to find stationery, and then you actually have to write the letter. Then you have to find the address of the hotel. Now, it was in another city. How do you find the address? You don't have a phone book from that. If you're under 35 years old, a phone book is this book that used to have phone numbers for those phones that were attached to the wall, okay? But eventually you find the address, you write it down, you get a stamp, you put it on the envelope, then of course this envelope stays on your mantle for like 3 weeks until you remember to actually mail it, right? But then you mail it, and then about a month later, now this is 2 months after you saw the cockroach isn't even still alive. You get a note that says, "Dear sir or madam, thank you so much for bringing this to our attention. Let us assure you this will never happen again." That's it. Maybe you told 2 or 3 people that you were upset with the XYZ hotel, but that's it. Now, it's last week. You check into the hotel, you drop your bags, you go into the bathroom. Right there on the toilet, giant cockroach doing the Macarena. And what's the first thing you do? Exactly, you take a picture of it. And you don't even have to get your camera, because your camera is in your phone was in your hand, because you walked into the bathroom like this. And then you write 6 letters. You write OMG, WTF, there's a giant cockroach in my room at the XYZ hotel, and then you do the worst thing that any hotel or any brand could ever have you do. You hit send. Boom. Well, it goes to Twitter. It goes to your 500 followers on Twitter, and you send it to your 200 business followers or business associates on LinkedIn, and 3,871 of your best friends on Facebook. But it gets worse, because they retweet it. And it goes out to all of their friends. And one of you has an idiot friend who has a cockroach page on Pinterest, right? So they write, see, you're laughing, but you know it's true. You know who that person is. And they write a magnificent example of the Malaysian howling cockroach seen by my friend Bruce at the XYZ hotel. And if the XYZ hotel isn't monitoring their social media, they don't even know this is going on. What they know is that the Alan Weiss $1 Million Summit is not coming. They know that their business, their ADR, average daily rate, is dropping. The Mandelbaum Bar Mitzvah has just canceled. They have no, you know the Mandelbaums, huh? Yeah. So they have no idea what's going on. And yet, we all think that our businesses are the same as they were 5 years ago. The entire world changed while we were asleep. And we just didn't know it. The future started yesterday. And when you wrote those 3 letters, WTF, what you did was make it very clear that something has changed. Because y'all know what WTF stands for, right? Well, you know what it doesn't stand for. It does not stand for Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. It does not stand for the Wisconsin Tourism Federation. It did, by the way. They changed their name. It doesn't stand for the Wausau Theater Festival. If you're in the back seat of a car and your parents are driving to Disney World, it doesn't stand for, whoa, Timmy farted. It doesn't, it stands for what the, hang on. What it really stands for is where's the future? Because each time you say WTF, What you're telling yourself is, I need to pay attention. Something's going on here. Something's different. There's a problem. And here's what's good about problems. One man's ceiling is another man's floor. One man's trash is another man's treasure. You've heard all those sayings. Here's what's good about problems. Those WTF moments, it's not just us that's having them. It's our clients that are having them. And it's our potential clients who are having them. And what do? We provide products and services to fix things for our clients. So every time you think WTF, you know that someone else is thinking it too. And what you need to hear is that ringing of opportunity. There's opportunity out there. Something's going on. So then what you have to know how to do is how to respond to it, how to react to it. Now here's something weird. You saw Victoria Labalme yesterday. She did the keynote up here. She was awesome, right? Awesome. What she spoke about is what I'm going to speak about. I don't know how many of you all went and saw Mark Levy yesterday afternoon talk about elevator speeches and backstory. Also awesome. Victoria's prettier. Sorry, Mark. But what he talked about is what I'm going to talk about. You would think that we all planned this. In fact, I was going to do Victoria's talk, but now I'm going to cancel the interpretive dance portion of my presentation. But what they spoke about is how you respond to these opportunities. How you get people to understand who they are, what they need, who you are, what you provide. You remember Brian Williams? Okay, I wasn't sure. Brian Williams was a newscaster. We all know it. He was the head of NBC News. He was the senior editor. He made $8 million a year. He had a 10-year contract. You can do the math, 80 million bucks, a lot of money. He was doing pretty well. And then he made one mistake, one WTF moment. He told a lie. He told a story about being in a helicopter that was shot down. Turns out he was not in the helicopter that was shot down, and the other one wasn't actually shot down. I think the word they used was conflated, which is an impressive word that means lie. So he told a lie, and he was fired. He was gone. He was off the air. Now, that was about a year ago. You start to see him now a little bit on MSNBC. They're trying to bring him back. Very talented guy, long contract, bless you. But mark my words, he's not coming back. He's done. He might come back as an entertainer. He might come back in soft news, but he's not coming back as a newscaster. He's not coming back as the anchor of a major network. This will never happen because he told a lie. But here's the interesting thing. There's another celebrity who also told a very similar lie and really has had no effect. And I wrote it down. I got the newspaper article to make sure that I read it to you exactly right. This other celebrity said, "I remember landing under sniper fire. There was supposed to be some kind of a greeting ceremony at the airport, but instead we just ran with our heads down to get into the vehicles to get to the base." Now, I am not making political commentary here. I'm just observing what's going on. That was said by Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton is probably going to win the Democratic nomination, and there's a very good chance that Hillary Clinton is going to be the first female president of the United States. We're going to find out in November. Take it off your partisan hats for a minute. Just look at what happened. Brian Williams told a lie about being shot down, and he was off the air like that. Hillary Clinton told the exact same conflated story, and yet she has a very good chance of being the president. What's the difference? And it comes down to two words. Two words. Victoria described it as through line. Mark described it as backstory. I use two words to say it too. Authentic truth. Brian Williams was a newscaster. His authentic truth was, coincidentally, the truth. He stood on the shoulders of giants, Eric Sevareid, Hutley Brinkley, Walter Cronkite, Diane Sawyer, whoever you like. He promised the truth and he let us down. Hillary Clinton told the same story. Hillary Clinton is not a newscaster, she's a politician. Guess what? The authentic truth of politicians is not the truth. We expect that they're going to lie to us. We don't like it, but it's not their authentic truth. And therefore, it's destroyed his career and really will not affect her career. If you understand that, it begins to change the way you deal with your public, with your opportunities, and in fact, with yourself. You all know the story. I don't have to tell it about the little girl who picks up the frozen snake and the snake bites her. And she says, why did you do that? I was saving your life. And the snake says, it's in my nature. You knew who I was when I picked you up. Maybe you know it as the turtle with the scorpion. Every culture has that story. Every culture. Because it's a universal truth about who we are. That authentic truth is the key to what separates us from our competition. Here's the deal. There's nothing any of you do in this room that someone else does not do. Do you do it better? Of course you do. Do you have more degrees, more technology, more people, more abilities, more stories, more whatever? Are you better looking? Of course you are. But your customers don't know that. And if you only sell what you do based on the function of what you do, if you only sell what you do based on what you trade for money, then you have competition every day of the week. And a lot of that competition is willing to work a lot harder than you are, certainly a lot harder than I am, and we all know a lot harder than Alan will, right? But it's your authentic truth that sets you apart. It's the difference between what you trade for money and what your customers purchase. Starbucks trades coffee for money. But what you buy is a meeting place, a central square, a sense of community. Porsche trades transportation for money, but what you buy is performance or attention to detail or status or whatever it is you want from them. And the difference is the authentic truth. If you just want to be another consultant, another company doing what you do like everyone else does, just sell what you sell. But if you want to make that difference, you need to understand your authentic truth. Lots of companies do it. Mercedes, authentic truth. German engineering and quality, status. Porsche, we already said, performance. Ferrari's authentic truth is old men picking up young girls at nightclubs, right? Actually, that wasn't very nice, and it's just my ability to poke fun at Alan. Lamborghini's authentic truth is picking up girls at nightclubs. Honda's authentic truth, simplicity. Honda, we make it simple. And everything they do is about promoting that. They don't tell you about getting from point A to point B, which, let's face it, is the reason you buy a car. Now, just today, in today's newspaper, there's an ad for Acura. Acura is owned by Honda, introducing their new NSX, and they say, we found unexpected, innovative ways to design and engineer performance vehicles with one aim, to ignite the passion of driving. They don't say anything about simplicity, and if you notice, ignite the passion of driving. You could say, Maserati, ignite the passion of driving. Ferrari, ignite the passion of driving. BMW, ignite the passion of driving. Honda has lost their way. I predict if they continue to do this, they will lose significant amounts of brand value because that's not about their authentic truth. That's about what sports cars do. And lots of companies sell sports cars. So of course the question becomes then, what is your authentic truth? And what happens when you don't take advantage of it? What was Toyota's authentic truth? Let's stay with the car metaphor for a moment. Toyota's authentic truth, one word, reliability. Toyotas are appliances. They always start, they always run, they always get you from point A to point B. You can feel safe investing in it for people who have trouble paying for the car. You can feel safe putting your family in it. They're reliable. If, I don't know, a Ferrari is faster, you don't care. If a Bentley is more luxurious, you don't care. If an Audi is better looking, you don't care. If a Kia is cheaper, you don't care. Toyota's authentic truth is reliability. But if you recall, Toyota had a little problem. They had an unintended acceleration problem. They didn't do anything about it. They just denied it, denied it, denied it, denied it. It ultimately turned out to be true. They had to fix the problem. It's estimated that if they had done what a company whose authentic truth is reliability should have done, which is to simply say, if you have this trouble, bring your car in, we will fix it, no questions asked, it would have cost them $100 million. Instead, they didn't do that, and it's estimated that they lost over $2 billion in brand value. And I know 100 million and 2 billion sounds like a lot of money and the same amount of money, but it's actually $1,900 million different. And you know what they say? 100 million here, 100 million there. Pretty soon, you're talking about real money. $2 billion because they did not honor their authentic truth. Now look at Ferrari. Ferrari had a problem. Their 408s were combusting, bursting into flame. This is a $400,000 car. It's $250,000, I think, if you try to buy it list. But ultimately, it costs you about $400,000. And they would just spontaneously burst into flame, which, in case you haven't figured out, is not a good thing. And what was happening, they found out, was that there's adhesive on the fiberglass panels in the rear. The adhesive would melt. It would drip onto the exhaust manifold, cause fire. The cars go up in flames. What is Ferrari's authentic truth? I asked Alan about it being about, using it to meet girls in nightclubs. But the truth is, Ferrari's authentic truth is unquestionable levels of performance, uncompromised levels of performance for people who are willing to pay the price. Incredibly fast, incredibly great handling, incredible technology, incredible styling, and you're willing to pay the price. So Ferrari said to those people, if your car catches on fire, you bring it back, we replace it, no questions asked. Were there scams? Of course there were. You know there was some guy who was upside down in his Ferrari payments, and so he set his car on fire and turned it in. You know that happened. But Ferrari replaced a few cars. They are now considered one of the top 10 most valuable brands in the world. And think about what they manufacture. Ferrari makes less cars in a year than Toyota makes in an hour. Ferrari's gross revenue, although a lot of money to any of us, is a drop in the bucket compared to any multinational corporation. Yet their brand value soared because they emphasized their own authentic truth. It's very simple. There's 4 things you need to know to take advantage of this. Number 1, you need to know your authentic truth. You need to figure out what it is. You need to understand it. Number 2, you need to understand how it resonates with your consumer, how it resonates with your potential consumer, how it resonates with your audience. Because as I'm writing about in my new book, which comes out in September, all about them, the key is to move your authentic truth from you to your customer. We used to say you are what you eat. Today we say you are what you consume. The things that consumers buy are the way they tell the world who they are. Many of you may or may not admit it, but many of you have bragged to people that you were coming to this conference because your connection with Alan is a way that you tell the world who you are, how savvy you are, how sophisticated you are, how smart you are. Example, the keys to these cars. You notice they keep getting bigger? Do you remember when a key was a flat piece of metal, and if I said, hey, I'd like to borrow your car, you'd say, okay, I'll leave the key under the mat? You can't do that today. It'd be like the Princess and the Pea, right? The mat would look like this. Why do the keys get so big? Exactly, so people can see it. They don't fit in your pocket. You throw it on the table. And when you go to your car and you press the big honking key, what does the car do? Yeah, it flirts with you, right? And some flash their lights. Over here, you have a Jaguar, you're successful. Hey, look at me, I'm your Mercedes. Why? Because you can't take the car into the restaurant with you for the meeting. But you can throw the key on the table, and then when you go out to the parking lot, and everyone's going in different directions, oh, look at that Range Rover, that must belong to him, wow. We used to say you are what you eat. Today we say you are what you consume. The critical formula is CC, the letter CC, number 2, CC. Meaning company-centric to consumer-centric. You need to move your authentic truth from you to your consumer. They need to feel good about you, but they need to feel great about themselves. A good brand makes you feel good. Ooh, I like the leather. Ooh, I like the performance. But a great brand makes you feel good about yourself. So point 2 is how it resonates. Point 3, it needs to be known by everyone. When you say, here's what I do, here's why it matters to you, people have to understand it. They have to know why they matter. Every 4 years in this country, we are given a front seat view to the best branding exercise ever, which is the presidential election. And you can watch what's going on, and you can watch how candidates try to manipulate their brands. And again, take your partisan hat off. I don't care which side of the aisle you're on. Do it as an exercise, a non-passionate exercise in understanding branding. Look what happened to Marco Rubio. Look what happened to Donald Trump. Look what happened to Bernie Sanders. You can like them, dislike them. We can go to the bar afterwards and argue over a beer. I'd love to. But what I want you to do is watch what's going on. Watch how they take their brand message. They know their authentic truth, or they don't know their authentic truth. How they try to transfer it to their consumers. How they try to make sure that everybody understands it. And then point 4, never violate it. Never, ever violate it. Brian Williams is the perfect example. We knew his authentic truth. It was the truth. We knew how it resonated. If I put on NBC News, I'm going to hear what Brian Williams has to say. He's handsome, he's funny, he's talented, and he's going to tell me what's really going on, right? He transferred it. Everyone understood it. I watch NBC. If you don't agree, think what happens when someone says to you, I watch Fox. Or someone says to you, I watch NBC, MSNBC. Or someone says to you, oh, I listen to NPR. Forget the content of what's on those stations. Those comments tell you who that person is, right? So he told you who he was, why it mattered to you, but then he violated it. Bam, gone. I don't think you could find a better example than that. But let's look at other people for a moment. Michael J. Fox. What does Michael J. Fox stand for? Courage. Resilience, right? He didn't. He was an actor. He was another actor. He was a good actor, I guess. But then he was stricken with this awful disease, and the grace with which he's handled it has been a lesson to all of us. And all of a sudden, his authentic truth is this is what you do in times of adversity. He rose to the occasion, right? How about Madonna? Madonna's authentic truth is change. Every time you see her, she's different. Now, you might think of that merely as entertainment because it's very easy to put a shallow, surface-only viewpoint on all of these things. But think of who Madonna's audience is. When she was a young woman, her audience was young women. Those young women grew with Madonna. They grew up with Madonna. And what was she telling them? Here's how you change. Here's how you morph. Here's how you run the rapids of aging and professionalism and misogyny and sexism. Here's how you regain your pride. Here's how you find your strength. What do you do when you look older, when you sound older, when there's younger, hipper people coming up under you? She provided a map. She allowed her audience to go CC to CC. This is who she was, but let's face it, this is who you are. I saw a tweet one day. It said, OMG, I just saw Madonna on the subway. And then somebody almost immediately retweeted it with a little note. That means tomorrow you'll see Lady Gaga on the subway, but she won't ride it as well. What is Lady Gaga's authentic truth? Up till now, it's been copying Madonna. Who knows where it'll wind up? Here's another example, a celebrity example. How about Bruce Jenner? Now Caitlyn Jenner. Bruce Jenner's authentic truth was American, masculine, athletic ideal, right? He won the, what was it, the decathlon? Got all those Olympic medals. He was the big, strong, very handsome. I mean, he was on the Wheaties box. He was the best-selling Wheaties box ever. That's what he was all about. Then he had that little silliness in that TV show with that wacky family. But then he went on 2020 on Friday night, and he told all of us that in fact he was transgender and he was transitioning, right? But remember, his authentic truth was American male ideal. That didn't change. What changed was our perception of what that means. And whether you go, oh yeah, that's great, good for him, or oh, I think that's awful. Again, your personal opinion is your own business. But that was the most viewed 2020 ever. And Friday night is a very bad night for television because most people go to happy hour and then show up late on Saturday. But that was the most viewed news program on a Friday night ever because he honored his authentic truth, because he said, this is who I am. He didn't have to say, here's how it matters to you, because he changed the the way an entire country looks at an issue. Some of us didn't even know about it before. I believe at some point the name of what he went through is going to be changed from transgender to transgender because what he did was so important. And throughout history, there's examples of this. Understanding what your authentic truth is. Understanding why it matters. Pablo Picasso, great artist, we all know about him. Pablo Picasso took a bicycle seat and handlebars. He put the handlebars on top of the bicycle seat to make it look like a bullhead. Can you picture that? Bicycle seat, handlebars. He hung it on a wall. Now, of course, the gallery makes the art. The fact that it was signed Picasso makes it worth millions and millions of dollars. But what you really need to do is look at it and understand what Picasso was trying to say. Where's the authentic truth in what he was doing? Well, you got to understand who he was. He was a Spanish artist in the middle of the last century, beginning and middle of last century, and he was commenting on Spain. Spain was an agrarian country. They said it was in Europe, but not of Europe, because the Pyrenees, the mountains, really separated, more African than European. And the bull, El Toro, the bull head, was the symbol of the country. It stood for machismo, it stood for power, it stood for food, it stood for status, land ownership, agrarian economy. But three horrible things happened to Spain. Spain went through a civil war. Spain had the unbelievably detrimental and tragic influenza epidemic, and then fascism under Franco. Hundreds of millions of Spaniards were killed. The entire society in Spain changed. People had to move into towns simply to survive. So what was Picasso saying? What was once agrarian is now mechanized. What was once natural is now man-made. What was once a history of incredible culture is now made from garbage. The authentic truth of the country had not changed, but the way the country had to move in the future had. Now, if you were a consultant at that time, or if you ran a business at that time, you could look at that thing and say, oh my goodness, look at all the changes I need to make. I need to show my Spanish customers how to move their business, right? I need to show them how to move from an agrarian economy to an urban economy. But then you might say, well, look, that was 100 years ago. Let's be a little more current. Okay, how about Andy Warhol? Andy Warhol took a paint can and he put it on canvas. And once again, the gallery makes the art. It was Andy Warhol in Pittsburgh. You say, oh my God, that's worth millions of dollars. But really, the art itself is not that difficult to do, but Andy Warhol was making a statement. What was the authentic truth? He was talking about American society after World War II. During World War II, men went to war. Some came back, some did not. Women took a different place in society. Women had to work, Rosie the Riveter, you know all the stories. Now the men come back, but the women say, wait a second, I'm not going back to being barefoot and pregnant. That's the start of the women's movement, built on the suffragette movement. That's where it started. So what was Andy Warhol saying? Well, food used to be art. Food was made from scratch. And sexist though it is, women made food, men ate it. Now, both people were working. So food became mechanized. So if food was art, then art is food. Andy Warhol hangs that on the wall. You might look at it and go, well, that's just some junk. Or if you looked at the authentic truth, and you were a business person, you would say, look at the opportunity there. There's a whole new market. Families are going to need 2 cars. I could show my customers how to sell more cars. They're going to need garages. We're going to need expressways. How about daycare? How about all these things that are about to change just by seeing a paint can on a piece of canvas? But again, that was the 1950s. So you might say to me, come on, Bruce, be more current. Okay, homework assignment. Go to YouTube, not now. Go to YouTube and look up Louis C.K., Everything's Amazing, Nobody's Happy. And Louis C.K. talks about what's going on in the world and how nobody seems to enjoy it. He talks about flying, and he says that he was on a plane and they announced they're going to have trial Wi-Fi. And if you put this code in, you get free Wi-Fi. He says, so the guy next to me is watching ESPN, I'm emailing my kids, and then they announce, we are so sorry, but the Wi-Fi has gone down. Thank you so much. He says, the guy next to him says, this is the worst flight I've ever been on. Louis C.K. says, how entitled do you have to be that something you didn't know existed 5 minutes ago is now critical to your life? He says, did it ever dawn on you that you're sitting in an easy chair in the sky? He says, and think about this for a minute, Everybody should be in the airplane going, oh my God, we're flying. But that's not who we are. That's not our authentic truth. He says, now you can go from New York to LA. Some of you have to be here, right? He says, it takes 4 hours. It used to take 40 years. You would leave New York. On the way to LA, you would have children. Then you would die. And then your kids would get to LA. He says now, and pardon me, these are his words, not mine. He says now, you get on, you watch a movie, you eat lunch, you take a dump. Boom! You're in LA. And yet we complain, they ran out of the blue corn chips. Can you believe they made us sit on the tarmac for 15 minutes? You know, it's not the March of Bataan, for God's sakes. But if you watch that, what do you realize? Wait a second. Something's going on here. Something's going on here that my clients need to know about. Something's going on here that my business can benefit from. Why? Because when you watch that, what do you say? 3 letters. Oh, come on, you can do better than that. WTF? Where's the future? What am I missing? What am I not seeing? It's out there all around us. It's hidden in plain sight. We just have to be open to it. We have to be attuned to it. When I was a kid, I grew up on Miami Beach. I got very lucky. My parents moved to Miami Beach a year before I was born. I didn't have anything to do with it, by the way. But it was a great place to grow up. The one weirdness was we had black and white television. I don't know why, but we had black and white television. So my brother, sister, and I would complain to my parents about why didn't we have color TV? My father told us the reason we didn't have color television was that we didn't have color electricity. Which, of course, is funny, but if you think about it for a minute, it might make you all wonder why you're sitting there listening to me. Because I fell for it, right? My mother, who was much more thoughtful and artful, told us that when the world turned black and white, we would get color TV. Okay. So I used to, if you remember, again, those of you over 35, back then, you could see a show, you could see it once, right, a TV show. If you didn't see it, there was really no other way to see it until it went into reruns like 10 years later. There was no Netflix, there was no YouTube, there was no TiVo. I mean, there was really no way to see a show. The only movie you could see a lot was The Wizard of Oz, because it was on every year. And I loved The Wizard of Oz, and I would watch The Wizard of Oz every year. So my freshman year in college, I was out, what's the proper word? Experimenting, I think is the word we use. You can decide what I was experimenting with. I think you'll figure it out quickly. And came back to the dorms, and in that little rec area in the dorms, and The Wizard of Oz was on. Oh my God, I love The Wizard of Oz. So I sit down to watch The Wizard of Oz, and there's Dorothy, and she's really unhappy, and she doesn't like living in Kansas, and then the tornado comes, and it lifts the house up, and then it swirls, oh, I like that. It swirls around, and then bam, it lands in Munchkinland. At which point I go, holy crap, because it's in color. I didn't know that the movie went to color, because I had only seen it in black and white. You think that's funny. You've probably also figured out what the experimenting meant, right? You think that's funny. I was completely flabbergasted. I had no idea. I thought I was hallucinating, right? I mean, and of course, everyone around me is looking at me like, what? Okay, so anyways, I mean the Emerald City, right? The yellow brick road, the ruby slippers. I thought they said that because you didn't actually get to see it. I had no idea. But there's those 2 feet sticking out with the striped hose. Dorothy killed the witch, and then she goes on the journey on the yellow brick road, and she meets first the Scarecrow who wants brains, right? And then she meets she meets the Tin Man first, right? You know what, it doesn't actually matter. Scarecrow, okay. She meets the Scarecrow, he wants brains. She meets the Tin Man, he wants a heart. She meets the Lion, he wants courage. Then they get attacked by trees. Remember that? That was very scary that evening, back to the experimenting part. Then they go through the poppy field. In case you wondered how Frank Baum wrote The Wizard of Oz, just watch that poppy scene and you will know. Then they get to the Emerald City. Then they can't get in. Then there's the horse of a different color, which I didn't realize was actually in a different color. far as I knew, it was just a horse. But then they get in, then the wizard on the big screen, and the wizard says, yes, I can give you all of this, but then you got to go back, and they go back out, right, because they have to kill the witch. And then they get attacked by the flying, remember the flying monkeys? Yeah. Okay, I still have nightmares about the flying monkeys. I'm still terrified. Anytime I see a monkey flying, I am terrified. I just want to make that clear. And then, and then there's the giant, remember them, the big guards? You remember them, okay. And then the witch, and then they fight with the witch, and then they're going to lose, but then the water, and then I'm melting, and then the witch dies. And then they go back to the Emerald City. They get back in, and then the wizard, but then what would they say? Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain, who's actually the wizard, because the wizard's not a wizard. He's just some little schlemiel from Missouri, although he says Missouri, but that's where he's from. So then he says to the scarecrow, well, you want brains, but you already have them. What you need is a diploma. And he gets the diploma, and then the Tin Man gets he wanted a heart, so he gets a clock, which is the ticking thing, which was, I never figured that one out. But anyways, I guess the heart beats, a clock ticks. That was kind of crappy. But anyways, he gets the heart. The lion gets the award. And then Dorothy wants to go home. And the wizard says, well, he's not the wizard, he's just the schlemiel from Missouri. He can't actually do it because he was in a balloon and he got blown there, just no different than how Dorothy got there. But then Glenda, the good witch, shows up, right? She was the pretty one, in case you weren't sure that she was good and the other one was the bad witch. She shows up and she tells Dorothy, you had it in you all along. Remember that? I'm sorry, do you remember that? Yes. Thank you. Okay, because if you don't, I could start again and we could go through. Okay, so she tells her, you had it in you all along. At which point, if I was Dorothy, that's where I would have said, WTF, right, what the hell? I had it in me all along? Wait a second, I had to go on with these three freaks, and then I had to be attacked by trees and flying freaking monkeys, and a witch who's your sister who I killed. There's a dysfunctional family relationship. And then they wouldn't let me in, and then they do, and then the wizard's not a wizard, and I can't go back. And you call yourself a good witch? She said, all you have to do is click your heels, which is like a Nazi thing as far as I know, right? Click your heels, and you can say, there's no place like home, and then you can go home. Then she wakes up. We're back to black and white. Thank goodness, because I'm totally freaked out by the color. But she goes back, and then, in case they think you didn't figure out the metaphor, her family looks like the people she just dealt with, right? That nasty lady on the bicycle, she looks like the witch, and one of the uncles looks like the right? You remember all that? Because it's like I couldn't figure out the metaphor myself. As Freud said, sometimes a cigar is just a cigar, but they give you all the symbolism. But the key to the movie, and the message that you really need to internalize, is what Glenda said to Dorothy. You had it in you all along. You all know what your authentic truth is. You may not want to accept it. As Victoria talked about yesterday, you may want to think that you need to put on the blue suit, the white shirt, and the red tie and look like everybody else. But there's no margin in the middle. Being different, just like everybody else, is also not a solution. The answer is to figure out what it is that makes you tick, what it is that you're all about. Because when you do that, when you express that, whether you're a person, you're a company, you're a political candidate, you're a religion, you're a business, when you do that, all of a sudden, everything changes. All of a sudden, your messaging becomes easy because you know where it comes from. All of a sudden, what your website should look like, or what your logo, what font you should use, or what colors you should use, or what you should wear to meetings, is easy. You can find people who can do it better than you can, certainly. But when you understand it, you know how to direct them. And you know how to express that to your clients, which means, remember, CC to CC, you want your client to absorb it. Your clients are better able to express to others what you have done for them and why you matter. You know, they say about a trip, if you don't know where you're going, how do you know when you got there? If you don't know who you are, what you stand for, why you matter, how do you ever try to sell that to someone else? And so what happens is you get into that law of diminishing returns. It's like those old World War I flying ace movies with the biplanes. You know, they'd fly around and they'd shoot at each other. And eventually one of the planes would get hit, right? And it'd have a big puff of smoke, and then it would do this. And that could go on for a really long time. And if you could stop, if you had modern video technology and you could stop the film at any one point and say to the pilot, hey, how you doing? The pilot would say, well, you know, I'm kind of dizzy, but I'm fine. The eventuality was splat. The eventuality of businesses that don't understand who they are and why they matter is splat. Because in today's world of computerization, globalization, where everybody can do everything 24/7, 365, the function, the ability is not what people buy. People don't choose you for what you do, they choose you for who you are. I was trained to design logos for a living. You know what? You can get logos off Fiverr for, figure this one out, $5. That's where they came up with the name, by the way. Are they as good as I do them? No, they are not. Do most of the people who would hire me care? No, they don't. Especially when it's $5 or $25,000. Some people do. We still have a few of those clients. You could be a blacksmith shoeing horses, and guess what? You still might have a job on a farm somewhere in Louisville. But not like it was 100 years ago when there was a blacksmith, I assume, on every single corner. This change, this conversion, this shift in understanding how you market, how you message, was always there. It was always hidden in plain sight. But the way the economy was set up, the way business operated, you didn't really need to worry about it. But as I said, the world changed while we were asleep. And the future started yesterday. And the one thing that you have, that you offer, that nobody can copy, is that authentic truth. So then the big question becomes, how do you express it? And I want to show you exactly how to do that. But before I do, just so I don't forget at the end, I want to tell you that I have a little, based on my authentic truth, I do my speeches in these little mind maps. If any of y'all want this so you can keep track of it, I have it online. It's very easy for you to get. I have a bit.ly URL, so it's just bit.ly/bturkel. 1 L, by the way, B-T-U-R-K-E-L. And that'll take you to my portal, and you just put in your name. I'm not selling anything, but if you want that. Also, Victoria did an ebook on her through line, the prism, right? You take your authentic truth, you put it in the prism, and then you expand it. And she did I think like an 80-page ebook, which puts my little doodle to shame, I have to say. But it's also on there too, so they're free. You can just go on there and get it. You will put your email address, which means I will send you my blog. Every week I write something about branding and my unique way of looking at it. I don't sell anything. You can unsubscribe. You can send me nasty notes if you want, but that's where it is. So it's bit.ly/bturkel, and then you can get both of those things. Okay, so then the question becomes, you're different just like everybody else. How are you going to express this? I want to take you on a little trip. Actually, before I do, let me just stop for a moment and see if any of you have any questions, because this stuff is so simple, but it's not simplistic. It's easy to understand, but it's not necessarily easy to do. So does anyone have any questions? Yes, sir?
Process for uncovering that truth.
Process for uncovering that truth. Ask people around you. They already know. Look at stories from your childhood. And the most important thing, turn your liabilities into your assets. We all are egomaniacs with inferiority complexes, right? So where you might not be able to figure out quickly what your strengths are, or at least give them enough credence, well, I'm good at this, but I don't know about that. We all know what our bad parts are. So work from that. When I speak at conferences like this, one of the things that I always get on those little surveys is energetic, enthusiastic. Pee Wee Herman, you know, which is a good thing when I'm up here presenting. It wasn't a really good thing when I was in elementary school. right? It was a liability. I used to always get the notes, Bruce is good in class but needs to pay more attention. Bruce needs to stop drawing and stop telling jokes and whatever whatever it was. Somehow that liability became an asset. So turning your liabilities into assets is an enormous opportunity. I'll give you a perfect example from today's headlines. Again, I'm not taking sides here, just if you watch without a partisan hat. Ted Cruz. Ted Cruz is running for president. He has a terrible liability. Nobody likes him. Yeah, which is, let's face it, that's a liability, right? So what does he try to do? He smiles, he kisses babies, he does all the stuff politicians do, but he still has that little voice that sounds like, did you ever notice? It sounds like a newsreel from the 1920s. Well, hello everybody, right? No senators would endorse him because nobody likes the guy. That's his liability. So if you say, what's his authentic truth? How do you turn your liability into an asset? It's very simple. Nobody likes me because and he's a religious conservative, and that's his authentic truth. That's all that matters to me. I don't care what people think about me. I don't care what the Washington elite. I mean, I'm writing the speech for him, right? I am unlikable because you can't buy me, you can't convince me. I stand for, if he had done that, he would have had a very, very different campaign. But he didn't. He tried to be likable. But if he had understood what his authentic truth was, again, some of you would say, great, I agree with that. Some of you would say, no, I don't like that at all. Irrelevant. We can't be all things to all people. We can't sell to everybody. Did I answer your question? Okay. Anyone else? Yes, sir. Chad.
What's your next book about?
My next book is titled All About Them, and it is about moving from CC to CC. How do you, in today's environment, move your branding and your message and your advertising and your electronic and your digital? How do you move it? Stop talking about yourself. Start talking about your consumer. Because today, every other bit of information is available. It used to be if somebody came and presented and told you who they were and how great they were, you kind of had to take them at their word, right? You weren't going to call the university to find out if they graduated. You weren't going to look up on Amazon to see if they actually wrote the book. You couldn't find out if they, in fact, were a New York Times bestseller 8 years ago. There was really no way to do it. Today, you can do it while you're talking to them, right? You can figure, Google knows everything. And so we can no longer, bless you, we can no longer market that way. We have to change, and that's what the book's about. But thank you for asking me. All right, so then the question becomes, I'm different just like everybody else. How do I do this? And I want to tell you, actually I want to take you on a little trip. I want to leave Los Angeles. We're going to go to Leipzig, Germany. We're going to leave 2016. We're going to go to the 1740s. We're going to meet with a man by the name of Johann Sebastian Bach. Good, you've heard of him. Johann Sebastian Bach was a composer, very famous composer, and if you know anything about classical music, you probably know a lot of the pieces he wrote. But if you think about the arc of your career, he wasn't born a famous composer, and when he got out of music school, he had to make a living, so he was a teacher. He taught viola, he taught violin, he taught the harpsichord, he didn't teach piano, believe it or not, because pianos didn't actually exist when he was young. It was invented later on in his life. A lot of the music that became the tunes for his great compositions were actually little ditties he wrote for his students. One of them, probably his most famous, but I don't know for sure, was a piece of music called Minuet in G. Any of you who have children who've taken piano lessons, in fact, who has children who've taken piano lessons? Keep your hands up, by the way. Oh, one rule. This means yes. This means no. This is what the dinosaurs did in Jurassic Park, okay? So, minuet, kids who take piano lessons. All right. How many of you have kids? Okay. How many of you know what kids are? And for those of you who still refuse to raise your hand, how many of you were once a child? Can we at least get that? Okay, thank you. So, Minuet in G, if you have kids who've taken piano lessons, you know it. And I wanted to play it for you because it's crucial to understanding this next point. So I told, when we were arranging my appearance here, I told Alan that I needed a baby grand piano right here on the stage. There were 3 problems. Apparently, in order to pay for his Bentleys, Alan has something called budgets. And bringing the piano here was not within the budget. Second of all, they were putting up this big riser, and they couldn't figure out how to get the baby grand piano onto the riser. And then third of all, I don't play the piano. But I figured, you know what? Bach didn't play the piano either. He played a miniature piano called a harpsichord. So I brought a miniature harpsichord. It's here somewhere, which is really weird because yesterday Victoria talked about harmonicas. Remember that? And one of our sound guys has one in his pocket right now, and he's going to probably play a duet with me. So minuet in G, it goes something like this. Thank you. Okay, let me let you in on a little secret. Every time I play harmonica in public and people applaud, I only wish my wife was here. Okay, so Johann Sebastian Bach, we got it, right? 1740s, he wrote that piece of music. It became this very, very famous composition. I hope some of you recognized at least a little bit. So now we're going to take another trip. We're going to go from Leipzig, Germany to Vicksburg, Mississippi. We're going to go from 1740 to 1940. We're going to go from Johann Sebastian Bach to one of my personal heroes, Sonny Boy Williamson. Now, these two guys, oh, someone knows who he is, great. These two guys are about as different can be. Johann Sebastian Bach was short. Sonny Boy Williamson was 6'6". Johann Sebastian Bach, you've seen the pictures. He wore the sort of red velvet Eddie Munster suit with the pilgrim shoes and the socks. Sonny Boy had been to England. He played with the Yardbirds, with the Animals. He came back with English wool suits, and he wore all black suits, black bowler cap. They were about as different as, well, they had some similarities. They each had three names, right? Johann Sebastian Bach, Sonny Boy Williamson. They were both composers. Johann Sebastian Bach wrote all that music. You know, that was also redone. The Babies, the Toys rather, did one of his songs. Billy Joel says that most of the interludes in his songs are all Bach progressions. Whiter Shade of Pale, Procol Harum, you all know that song. I know all the words. Back to the experimenting phase. Anyways, Sonny Boy did the same thing. A lot of the music that he wrote was redone by Led Zeppelin, by the Yardbirds, by Eric Clapton. I don't think he was actually paid for it. I think today it's called sampling, then it was called stealing. But Sonny Boy wrote a piece of music, and it sounds like this. It's called Peachy Tree. It sounds like this. Thank you again. Now, I know what you're thinking, which is, why the hell is this guy doing this? No, what you're thinking is, okay, nice, entertaining, fun, poorly played, but what does this have to do with me? So here's the secret. Both of those guys are as different can be, right? Both of those pieces of music are as different can be. They both use exactly the same 7 notes. And if you watch The Sound of Music, you know them. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti. Yeah, there's do, but do, do. It's an octave. It's the same note. It's just 8 steps apart. Every piece of Western music ever written uses those same 7 notes. And so as you look to express your authentic truth, understand you have the same tools, the same opportunities, the same 7 notes, the same 26 letters that anyone else does. All you need to do is put it in your own order, in your own sequence, with your own timing and your own tempo. That's what you bring to the party. And if you're still not convinced, let me just show you that the most sacred song, one of the most sacred songs, I suppose, in the English language, and one of the silliest, are the same song. I'm talking about, of course, and you knew this, Amazing Grace and the Mickey Mouse Club. Watch and sing along at the appropriate part. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found, was blind, but now I see, now I see, now I see. I once was blind, but now I see. And if you don't believe it, here's the amazing part. A-M-A-Z-I-N-G-G-R-A-C-E. I once was lost, but now I'm found, was blind, but now I see. Thank you very much.